Welcome. My name is Laura Cecere, and I'm interviewing the technologists that are going to be at the Global Summit, and this is our digital showcase. Today, I'm interviewing Jim Hayden. Jim is the CTO of Savi Technology, and Savi produces sensors and also real-time visibility solutions. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Laura. Good to be here.
Yeah, so you've been to the Global Summit before. We look forward to having you come back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to be there. It's a great opportunity to learn what's going on in supply chain.
Well, awesome. Well, tell the group a little bit about yourself, Jim, and what Savi does so that they know how to start a conversation with you at the summit.
Sure. So my background's in big data. I've been working on what used to be called very large databases and now big data for more than 20 years. And my jobs have been leading teams that find interesting patterns in data. And so what we do here at Savi is we use sensors to track shipments around the globe. And then when something interesting happens, we let our customers know about it. And so if something happens to the cargo in transit, such as it's going to be delayed or it's been damaged, in real time, we can let our customers know what's going on with their cargo.
Well, and Jim, I know you started out with defense, and now you're doing a lot of interesting work for manufacturers. Any stories you'd like to share of how Savi's helping some manufacturers to improve supply chain with your technology?
Sure. So sensors also have environmental capabilities. They can determine if something like shock is incurred. And so one of our customers, who also attends your Global Summit, uses sensors to help determine the optimal packaging for some high-end, high-value products they're manufacturing. And the sensors are able to tell them when they incur a certain shock value, a G-force, that's likely to cause breakage. And so they were under the impression before applying sensors that certain modes of transport, such as rail and ocean, are more likely to cause damage to goods than truck or air. And what the sensors proved out is it's not the transit component at all where the damage occurs. It's at the transshipment points. It's where the goods are being handled where over 90% of the damage occurs. And it doesn't really matter what the packaging is. And so they're able to reduce money and not spend as much on packaging for the modes where they were applying extra cushioning for their goods.
Love it. You know, I learn something every day. Well, Jim, we're talking at the conference about getting ready for Supply Chain 2030. And I've been an industry analyst for 2 decades now, and I write about the future. And I've, look back and reflect that I've been fairly aggressive and we've not made a lot of progress. And I'm hoping to build a guiding coalition for 2030. And one of the things we're going to do at the conference is work together to create some images of what Supply Chain 2030 is going to look like. What do you think 2030 is going to look like? And do you agree with me? We've not made a lot of progress. And if so, why not?
Yeah, I do agree with you that not a lot of progress has been made over the past decade from what I've seen. But recently, we're seeing trends that look like people are starting to accelerate the adoption of technology. And that's what they've done in other vertical markets, and it's been very successful. And people are starting to understand that pretty much all of the answers to what's going on with your business are in data. And if you can capture this data and then exploit it to understand what's going on, you're going to have a competitive advantage.
So what do you think 2030 looks like? I mean, sensors are getting cheaper. They're getting much more powerful. You guys manufacture sensors with a lot of analytics. How do you think 2030 shapes, and what's it look like?
Yeah, I think people are coming around, and it's going to be a more connected supply chain. It's going to be a more collaborative supply chain. I think that's one of the human factors that needs to change. People need to be willing to share information and knowledge about what's going on, and they're part of the network of networks. And I see that in 2030, I see at least parts of the supply chain having to do with logistics and transportation and visibility, end-to-end visibility, adopting this technology and pretty much mainstream by 2030.
So tell us a little bit more about what you do. I see a slide up. Let's talk a little bit about Savi and how people should engage with you at the conference.
Sure. So we manufacture sensors. These are some of our sensors here. The ones on the top right are electronic seals. So they go around the container door, and if anybody tampers with that at all, tries to break it, tries to cut the wire, a real-time alert is sent to the manufacturer to let them know when and where it happened. The ones below that are for tracking location around the globe, and also for assets, understanding when they're stationary or moving. So those are the sensors, and they generate data that is transmitted through the wireless network, and that data comes in, and Savi captures it, makes sense of it, applies it in context, and then, if need be, generates alerts to send to our customers. So I'll give you a couple examples of what might cause an alert. Here's an example of one of those electronic seals that's allowed to be opened and closed in the distribution center or the warehouse geofences. But if it leaves the geofence and then it's tried to be opened or closed, we generate an alert, and that's a tamper. And there's an example of us generating a real-time tamper alert. This is the user interface. You can see across the top, it's kind of telling you what's going on with all your shipments and how many of the ones in red might have something you want to do something about. As you can see over here, customers are allowed to set turn time thresholds for how long a good is allowed to sit in a certain shipping point. And when that's exceeded, they get an alarm. Over here, you see battery levels. If you're putting sensors on containers, you want to make sure that the battery is not going to die. So this allows you to quickly figure out which shipments or which containers have sensors that might have battery issues. Let me show you one more example here. This is an interesting one. So we also captured AIS data, which is satellite data that shows the location of every cargo vessel in the world. And we capture all of that every day. That's big data. That's 15 million location updates a day. And here's an example of a sensor on a container. The container comes into the port, and we know what vessel it's supposed to get on, so we start tracking that vessel coming into the port too. What happens is the vessel then starts leaving the port, and we still see a signal from the container. So that container got rolled. It missed getting on the booked vessel, and we were able to generate an alert and let that customer know that it got rolled, as opposed to them waiting till it got to the port of debarkation and then finding out their container wasn't on there. So it's giving more information in more real time as soon as it's possible to know there's been a disruption, so you can take action on that. And I'll show one more example here. We have a bunch of real-time examples here, but over time, as you can imagine, we're gathering a wealth of data. And so what's happening in supply chain is there's an awful lot of slack being added to the transit of goods. Perhaps it's going through a 3PL, a freight forwarder. The truck carrier adds a day on each side. Then the ocean vessel carrier adds a couple days on each side. And next thing you know, you've got a week or so of slack built into the transit time it takes you for goods to get places. If you can capture this data historically, what you see here are actual transit times, median transit times, overtime for these various transit lanes, and also how much time was spent actually moving in transit versus stationary at the shipping point. And when you have more time spent at your shipping point, your distribution center or your plant, than you do moving the goods, that's a sign of potential operational issues you might be having. So it's the real-time notion of what's going on right now, where are my goods, what condition are they in, and when are they going to get there? We use machine learning to help figure that out. And then over time, how can I look at my performance over my entire supply chain and understand what's going on there? All that make sense, Laura?
It does. In fact, I love what you're doing. I think so many times people just don't know how to have the conversation to really think about how to be real time, how to deal with real time data, how to use it. So when you're at the Global Summit, how would you recommend that people think about this for Supply Chain 2030? What kind of problems or answers do you think that you solve?
So I think I think certainly people that have high value goods or high consequence goods, it's kind of a no-brainer to put a sensor on your container now. If you have these shipping points or transshipment points where the container goes and you have no idea what's going on until it gets to the next carrier or next shipping point. And if you're in a situation where maybe you've manufactured something that's a one-off good, and if something happens to it, you've got to go all the way back to square one to start manufacturing again. High value goods or high consequence, I use that term too. That could be dangerous chemicals or something like that, or pharmaceuticals where if they get compromised, that could be significant to your brand.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing. You've been to the Global Summit before. Any recommendations for people as they get into the summit and network and imagine Supply Chain 2030?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I get out of the summit is the sharing of ideas. It's a very open environment, and don't worry about competitiveness. We're all in this, and it's one of the things I love about you, Laura, for the greater good of supply chain, and that's why we're there, and hopefully that's why everybody else is there.
Well, thanks, Jim. See you in Chicago.
Okay, looking forward to it. Bye-bye.
Bye now.